This is the Literacy Mindset Podcast, where education leaders discuss identifying and removing phonological barriers with Mindplay's CEO, Jeff Pendleton.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. Very excited for another episode of the Literacy Mindset Podcast. Today, my guest, Dr. Michelle Miller, who is the superintendent of schools at South Fayette Township in Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate you having me.
Well, I appreciate you joining and taking time out of your day. It is summertime still for a lot of people. We started school today, so it feels less summertime, but I'm excited to talk through some of the really interesting and exciting things that you have. You have a great background relative to literacy. So in fact, maybe let's start there. Let's get a little context for the audience, kind of your background and how it is that you got to where you're at.
Absolutely. So I've been in education over 25 years and have been a superintendent for 15.
Okay.
My background started in the classroom as an elementary educator. Soon I earned my secondary social studies certification. So mainly my teaching has been at a high school, mainly with 12th graders. The interesting thing there is that my elementary background prepared me well because of all of the literacy that we learned in my elementary programs and what I experienced in the classroom to be able to infuse that, but in a content. And I think that's a real challenge for our high school teachers, is always making sure that we're embedding that literacy in the content areas, because we're content area specialists, but still we need to be those teachers of reading and writing. I've been a principal at a middle school, assistant principal at a high school, assistant superintendent, and I've been a superintendent for over 15 years. And as you said, I'm working on year 5 at South Fayette, which is just about 10 miles south of the Pittsburgh area.
10 miles south of the Pittsburgh area. Okay, give us a few more details about how many students are in the district.
Certainly.
Schools.
So at one point, we were the fastest growing school district in Pennsylvania. We went from a very rural farm country and very, very small, not graduating more than 100 students per class. In Pennsylvania, unlike other areas where there's county schools, we have 500 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. So my school district now has over 3,500 students. So we've really gone from just over 1,000 to 3,500. We are a high performing school district. I believe that our school district is the hub of our community. It's a draw for why people move in. I would say our last Business Times, Pittsburgh Business Times, ranked us the number 1 district of the decade for the past decade. And so very proud of that, not only because of academic achievement, but the opportunities that we provide our students. We have very robust programs, not only in academics, but the arts and athletics as well.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to dive in and kind of talk about a number of the things that you have going on. Let's start a little bit with sort of this eclectic background, elementary trained, and then secondary focus with social studies, and then kind of spending time as a high school teacher. What, as you think about sort of the K-12 literacy spectrum, right? The science of reading, it's the wave of everything right now. It's the hottest trend in literacy over the last 5 years. I think it's a top-ranked search term amongst parents and educators alike. So walk us through what happens as the science of reading sort of shifts from elementary into secondary. You kind of talked about subject areas and subject area expertise. Can you just walk us through, like, what does that shift look like from foundational skills that get taught, and then how that manifests itself up in upper grades?
So I always look at K1 and even into 2, learning to read, and really building all of the foundational skills in order to be a fluent reader. At the same time, though, they're learning to write. They're learning comprehension skills, analytical skills. So those underpinnings are still there. But the major focus is, can I read the words, and do I understand what those words mean? The further that we go, and the research does show that students who aren't reading at grade level at third grade, it becomes infinitely more and more difficult to catch a student up to grade level as they progress. So we've really done a lot with, we call it our RAC rooms, Reading Achievement Center, where we can give some specialized support to make sure that our students are receiving timely interventions to support them. But as they move into middle and high school, we still have students who need support, but we're finding ways to help them not only read what's on the page to understand and have that comprehension, but we don't stop there. We're looking at those higher level thinking skills and making sure that we're not stuck in just reading the words on the page, because even if they struggle as a reader, they still are thinkers. And so how do we ensure that those higher order thinking skills are still being developed along the same time that we're still supporting that growth of those reading skills? That really comes into play when you start to really get into the content areas in high school. And so always ensuring, what are the reading strategies? Because the reading strategies do change. What we're showing kids in, third, fourth, and fifth grade, what does that look like when we're really interacting with text? What are the strategies that we use when we're talking to the text? What questions do we have as we're reading? How engaged are we? Are we just learning to read the words on the page, or are we really engaged in that content and doing self-checks along the way? I think too, what changes is that the reading piece of things are definitely teacher-led and teacher-monitored when they're in those lower grade levels. But there's these assumptions for our middle and high school learners that they should know that by then. Most do. Some do not. So for the students who do, how do we give them the independent self-check skills that they're doing it on their own? And for our students who are struggling learners, we need to scaffold that and make sure that they still have those skills, but they're not left all on their own, that we're modeling some and helping them really practice the skills that we're teaching them so that they can read those more complex texts. Because the lexile levels increasingly get more difficult. And I think one of the things I always think about is our trades. If a student says, I'm not planning to go to college, I'm going to go into the trades. That's where I believe the most difficult reading occurs. Have you ever looked at a car mechanics manual? Like, those are so complex. So we have to be able to give all of our students the skills to be readers, to understand, and to be able to comprehend and then analyze and do something with what they're learning.
No, that's great. And that kind of helps us visualize it. Would you say that as students move up through the grade progression, that it's more common to see gaps arise in comprehension, in fluency, than in phonics and phonological awareness? Does that track? You've had a lot of experience in the space across the grade spans. Does that feel accurate to you, or how have you seen it manifest?
It does, because I believe that the basic fundamental skills of reading the word, that our kids get that. It's now putting the words together, and it's understanding what does that say, and then what does it really mean? And then can I put that in my own words and make sense of it in different contexts? And as you see, that shift becomes more and more complex. And I find that, one of the things is, I would say middle and high school teachers, and I would even say in elementary too. What do we typically do? At the end of the chapter, if there are questions, we have the kids do fill in the blank and the vocabulary words, and we go, oh, skip the critical thinking part. Oh, skip that part. Skip that. And if we keep skipping the hard stuff, they know the easier stuff. We've talked about that in class. They can go back. That's a quick Google. That's a search. That's an Ask Siri. That's a look in the text. We can do all that. But coming up with the critical thinking on your own, that's the meat. That's the stuff we should be practicing more of and helping our kids with, because those higher level skills, the others will come along with it. if we continue to focus on the higher level. But as teachers, and I will be the first to say, I did it whenever I was a teacher, do the first 2 sections, skip the third. That one's really tough. That's the one we should.
Time.
Yes.
Is that part of the challenge? Is just teachers are like, I don't have time to get into all of that analysis. Let's go to the next unit. Is that maybe what drives it?
I think sometimes that can drive it, but I can also say that it takes time. It takes time to grade, but more importantly, kids have to honor the struggle. And that's the frustrating piece. I think sometimes we want it to be easy for them. We want that quick check, but that's not helping them on their journey to become an independent learner in a way that really is deep and meaningful for their future.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. There is sort of a productive struggle that needs to happen, but sometimes it just creates enough consternation in the classroom that it's like, maybe we'll skip that part for now, just this one time. Yeah, okay, I'm following you there. What, as you think about sort of the challenges around that management, I'm thinking in my head right now of another challenge that may be arising, because I have daughters that are in high school, and I get reprimanded when I use punctuation inside of text messages to my daughters. It's not cool. It's not what I'm supposed to be doing anymore. So as a superintendent, you kind of have to guide this with academic integrity. How do you deal with that? How do you help the students and the teachers make sure that we have academic integrity while recognizing that X and social media and text messaging is a major driving force of how they process things in text?
So I think it's so funny because now our kids are looking at 15-second attention, and it needs to be under 100 characters, but yet we're asking them to write the 5-paragraph essay, right? And these lengthier things. I think that there's a time and place for all. And that's what we need to be teaching students, is that there are some things that are appropriate in some venues, and there are other things that are appropriate for others. And if you are going to represent yourself in professional settings, then you need to represent yourself well. And it's either you're representing yourself, your company, you're trying to get a job, looking at a resume, you need to have correct, punctuation and have everything there, and formatting. So, your best friend's not going to care that thank you becomes TY, or in my opinion, IMO, away from keyboard, all that. No one cares when you're talking friend to friend. Everyone will care when it's a professional presentation, when you're going before a state representative or the legislature and you're lobbying for something. You're going and you're arguing a case before the Supreme Court. You are, whatever it may be, we have to know where and when to use the skills that we are teaching. And I think that's part of our job as educators, to let them know it's fine here. It's not fine here. Slang is fine here. And I think that's, and I'm old enough to say, that was our struggle, is you can say that there, but you can't use ain't in a formal paper. It is right. Not. My mom would argue that I should never use ain't, but
There's no place for it.
But the transition from what we heard as, young children learning what's appropriate, what's not. Now it's exacerbated with social media. It's just another layer, but the argument's still the same. It's the same thing. Know your audience, know where you're speaking, how are you representing yourself, and what does that look like?
Do your teachers give you feedback that that's hard to do? Or is it like, now we know and we can help them context switch and no big deal?
I can't say that it's not difficult, maybe with some who have a hard time with our students transitioning from informal to formal. But I have to say, I have such incredible educators. They make it happen. And I don't know what magic they use or whatnot. I think it's just repetition and expectations. We don't lower expectations at South Fayette. We make sure that we help all students meet those expectations. Sometimes it's more difficult than others, especially for students with either learning needs or especially if students haven't had all of the kind of skills, especially for students who might move in. They might not have had all of the repetition that maybe our students who have, started with us in kindergarten have, but our teachers make it happen. Our teachers are amazing.
Yeah, well, that's what makes for great success and outcomes is great teachers. Let's talk about another aspect of the evolution of reading, and that's just the library experience itself. Coming from the software side of space, I can talk about plenty of the benefits of getting around what I used to do in high school. When you would hand me a book, that doesn't mean I read the book, right? I may have skimmed, I may have got through. So now I can put closed questions on every page in the digital text. And so there's a lot of benefits of digital libraries. There's also a lot of good research about holding a book in your hand. And how do you guys manage the balance of that?
So I think our K-5 libraries are so rich with the books that students still care about having a book in their hands and reading. And our checkout circulation is incredible. And we're always adding to it to ensure that we have the high interest books and the ones that our students love to read. I love that, we do a book challenge where, students are competing in the spring. They read several books and then they're competing. And it is such a great draw for our students and our families and such an exciting time. It really is that love of reading and reading together. I love that part of
Right.
that. As we get into 6 through 12, that's where I believe we've seen more of an evolution.
Okay.
We're moving more to kind of that library media center, where some of the things that we used to purchase, especially for research, might not be in, no more are we buying encyclopedias. No more are we just buying these, almanacs that we're looking at, because everything really, there's some form of research that we can do digitally.
Right.
So I think our students still want to have books to read for pleasure, and we still want that. Some of them will read that because maybe they're doing a book talk or a literacy circle, whatever that might be.
Right.
So we still have those options for students, but we also are embedding that with the digital options for students. What I also see is that our library media centers are continually that landing spot, which I love. I love that our libraries can be the center of our school, because I think it reminds me of Starbucks, that Starbucks isn't just about coffee. It's about connection. Mm-hmm. It's about a feel when you walk in. And we're actually talking about, how do we continue the evolution of those spaces so that more and more students want to be in those spaces and feel welcome, and it's meeting their needs? Because I think that's the key. My needs for a library space are very much different than our current learners. So how am I being respectful and listening and giving them voice into what they want in their library spaces, in their library media spaces, so that we can continue to evolve? Like at our high school, we have a library classroom where we have a lot of meeting spaces and kids know they have a private space. We have a podcast area. We have a STEAM kind of creator maker space. We have a cavern, which is a virtual reality classroom space, but we also have the typical circulation and the research that goes on as well. So I think we're in continual evolution, but that evolution has to be about students at the center. So at South Fayette, our strategic plan is based around being future-focused, student-centered, and innovation-driven. Students are intentionally at the center of that. And so we always need to be going back to ask, how might we serve our students best? How might we find out what they think they need and what they believe they need and what's in their best interest? And you can't always identify that unless you ask them.
That's a great point. So what do you think about how you use technology? Let's call it technology. I think COVID thrust most districts in the country into a one-to-one or like more technology use than they had potentially been. But it also gave us an opportunity to think about now how to use technology differently or ways that we can drive it. So when you think about literacy, you just sort of described the experience of reading a fictional text, right? Just the way you feel about it, all of that drives it. Do you use technology as a way to kind of drive experiences and push people towards literacy? You mentioned something about a pretty unique virtual space. So kind of talk a little bit about how you leverage that innovation and technology.
So I think often when people talk about technology, they talk about the one-to-one initiatives.
Sure.
And every student has either a Chromebook 3 through 12 or an iPad, K to 2. And that, so that's we have a learning management system, and they have a variety, whether it be apps or we have a learning management system. They have access to a lot on their devices. But I think with technology at South Fayette, we've looked at it's not just about a computer and a device. It's about how do we leverage technology for student growth. And oftentimes, one of the things that we've done is we have an esports program. In the past several years, it has become extremely popular. So it's technology. What we've done is actually had unified in this past year, unified esports. And what we find is some of our students who are struggling learners sometimes partner with other students, neurotypical and neurodiverse students are partnering together. And what we find is those social skills, the speaking skills, the communication skills over gaming, actually because they're passionate about it. But then also think about it, if it's really hard for me to look at you and have communication one-on-one, but it's a little bit different and easier when I'm looking at my screen and talking about what you're doing on my screen because it's high interest. And we see these students increasing their communication skills and their social skills through gaming. So I believe those computers are a tool to help our students grow and develop. It's not about the game. It's not about any of that. It really is about all of the other skills that they're acquiring. We also have something that's called a cavern. We partnered with Carnegie Mellon University, which is out of Pittsburgh, and we partnered with their Entertainment Technology Center. And, my shout out would be that, they become the hub for where Pixar and Disney and theme parks and all of these amazing movie companies come and, they're plucking their graduates out of this program because they are the most innovative, creative people ever. So they actually created a 285-degree space where instead of wearing the Oculus glasses and having an individual experience where I get to walk through the streets of Nepal, or I get to experience the Great Wall of China, or I get to go to the Great Reef Barrier, whatever it might be, we can now do this with a classroom. So CMU helped us design our space. CMU then helped us to understand the design, but it's our kids designing for authentic audiences what our students will see. And I think so that's where we leverage technology in our district. I have students too, some have won awards nationally. They're creating apps. Well, so for some of our clubs and activities and whatnot, they're creating apps to serve other populations. I have one that's a resource for parents of students identified with autism. I have one student who created one for addiction. So they're creating these apps because they're even creating their own nonprofits. So they're using technology, not just in the classroom, let me submit my essay, but they're using it for creative, innovative purposes. And that doesn't happen with every student, but those opportunities are there. We also have, I think 1 out of 11 school districts, if I recall correctly, we received a grant through Digital Promise. And so we created a cybersecurity program. So we're moving into year 3, but our students are really identifying, and they're not all going into cybersecurity, but they're learning about cybersecurity because if they want to go into accounting, if they want to go into law enforcement, it's applicable to all. But they're learning, they're using the technology to help move them forward and to create a more robust learning experience for themselves. So when I think about technology in our school district, yes, kids have a Chromebook or an iPad, and there's apps on those, and we use it for benchmark testing. In the state of Pennsylvania, we'll now do all of our state testing on a laptop. But for me, that's
Gotta think beyond that.
That's just changing from paper to pencil to technology because it's more efficient. I really think when we're talking about technology, it is how kids are using it to be more creative, innovative, and really look at higher order thinking skills to be able to apply those.
Right. No, that's great. Okay, well, let's stay on that topic just for a second. What about personal devices? That's another hot topic across the country right now. Cell phones on campuses. Do you guys have a policy or a framework around that? What have you experienced? What are you trying to do to mitigate the sort of the downsides to that?
Right. So in K-8, they can have them, but they stay in book bags.
Okay.
They're not in the instructional spaces whatsoever during the school day. We have so many students who stay after for activities, and parents also have a concern whenever they can't, in an emergency setting,
Sure.
that they can't connect with their child. I understand that. I have a 10-year-old. I get it. However, it really becomes a distraction during the school day. So in K-8, they are in lockers, in book bags, and they are not out throughout the day. That includes our iPhone watches. Everybody gets one after Christmas. So come January, we'll be reminding everybody that, because that becomes a distraction too,
Right.
when mom is texting and whatnot. So with that, then it becomes the high school, and we allowed personal devices, and it was a teacher discussion and discretion up until last year. And so what we said was, you are not permitted to have any cell phone out in hallways, in bathrooms, and in instructional spaces. So they are allowed at lunch. They are allowed at study hall if they have. And we don't have a lot of kids who have study halls all the time. But other than that, they're not out, and students put them away. What's interesting, parents have thanked us. Students have actually said it's a much better school year without the consistent distraction. I mean, everybody has that FOMO at first,
Right.
what am I not seeing? What's going on, et cetera. And I'm sure we have a few kids who somehow sneak it and they're in the bathroom and they're looking at it.
Sure.
I'm sure that happens. But at the end of the day, I believe that our students are using them better in the past year than they had in the past. And we're also doing a lot more proactive education about appropriate uses. I think that's the concern, is that students are engaging in conversations, activities, dispersing personal information, and it's becoming unsafe for them. And some of their decisions have life-altering
Right.
outcomes.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm not surprised by the sentiment and the statements. I'm a little bit surprised at the frequency of it, but I've now talked to a number of superintendents that described exactly what you just did. And that is, we decided to implement this policy, and we have pretty much the entire community, students and parents alike, thanking us for this. So it's something certainly that we're watching. Well, we've had a pretty awesome conversation here, lots of topics that we've covered. We didn't get to go down the AI thread as much as I had hoped, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cheat with my last question here. Normally, I just ask you generally, what are you excited about, or what are you worried about in the future? Final wrap up. Give me something that you're worried about with AI, and give me something that you've seen and that you are particularly excited about with AI.
So my worry with AI is, I believe, keeping up and keeping up to keep my kids safe. So it's so rapidly changing and evolving. So really making sure that as a district leader and as a school district, that we stay on top of what's out there, what is unsafe, what's the responsible use of AI in classrooms, but also personally, they're still our kids after 3:00 when they get on the bus and they leave. They're still our kids. So what they're doing at home, what they're doing in school, I believe that it is on us to ensure that our students are taught how to use AI ethically and safely. So my worry is keeping up to ensure that that's happening.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I want our kids to learn and grow, but at first I got to keep them safe. And that's my worry. My excitement is the options for creativity. And I think so as a school district that is known to be innovative, I'm excited to really explore how can we use this to capitalize on higher level thinking and to create new and different and to put our kids at the cutting edge of whatever field and whatever future they want to go into. We can't deny that AI is not going to be here. It's not going to evolve. Like, we can't deny that it's here.
Right.
And so how do we embrace it? How do we help our students see what their future can look like in a safe way? But how can they use it for their future? Not my future, their future. It's pretty exciting, the opportunity and the magnitude of creativity and innovation that can be spurred on by AI. We're already seeing it in industries. Industries are already using it. So let's make sure that our kids capitalize on understanding how it's created, how it can be used, and then doing it in a safe, ethical way to move their future forward. And because their futures are bright. So let's help them get there.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. That sounds exciting. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller, for joining me today. It's been a great conversation, and hopefully we get to do it again soon.
Come join us in Pittsburgh. Come see our school. We'd love to have you.
For sure.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Learn how we help students by identifying and removing phonological barriers at mindplay.com.